This tree made some of the best bows in North America. Its fence posts could outlast generations. Before barbed wire, farmers trusted it to hold the frontier together. And now, most people only know it for one thing: those strange green balls falling from a tree nobody seems to want. So how did one of the toughest, most durable woods in America become a forgotten leftover from another age? Because Osage orange did not disappear because it was weak. It disappeared because the world changed around it. And that is what makes this tree so interesting. Osage orange, Maclura palmifera, is not a true orange at all. It is a thorny, fruit-bearing tree native to a relatively small part of the south-central United States. But people spread it far beyond that range because it was useful, very useful. At first glance, it does not look like a miracle material. The trunk is often crooked, the branches can twist, the fruit is heavy, wrinkled, and odd-looking. It does not have the straight, towering form people usually associate with famous timber trees. And yet the wood inside is extraordinary. Freshly cut, it glows with a bright yellow to orange color that darkens with age. It is dense, it is hard, it is exceptionally durable. And in contact with the ground, it developed a legendary reputation for lasting far longer than ordinary wood had any right to. That reputation was not marketing. It was earned the hard way. Outside, in fields, in rain, in soil, over decades. Long before industrial fencing, long before modern lumber yards. This wood had already become famous for something else: bows. Osage orange was prized for bow making to such a degree that one of its old names, bois d'arc, literally means bow wood. And that tells you something important immediately. This was not just a wood that was hard. Plenty of hardwoods are brittle. Plenty of dense woods are difficult but forgettable. Osage orange was valued because it could store and release energy. It could take stress. It could bend, recover, and endure. That is a very different kind of usefulness. When a wood earns trust in a weapon, people pay attention. When it also survives outdoors for decades, people start building entire systems around it. And that is exactly what happened next. In the 19th century, one of the biggest problems on the American prairie was not just growing crops. It was fencing land. In many places, there was not enough easy timber. Stone fencing was expensive. And open land meant livestock could wander unless a boundary was real, visible, and strong. Osage orange offered a solution. Farmers planted it closely together as living hedges. With pruning and time, those hedges became thick, thorny, and extremely difficult to push through. For a period before barbed wire took over, Osage orange was one of the most important living fence plants in parts of the United States. Think about what that means. This tree was not just a raw material, it was infrastructure. It marked boundaries. It contained livestock. It protected fields and gardens. It acted as barrier and windbreak. It shaped the landscape itself. In some places, Osage orange was planted not as decoration, but as a working machine made of thorns and roots. And when those trees matured, the wood became useful all over again. Because after the hedge came the posts. If Osage orange had only been useful as a hedge, it would still be an interesting historical footnote. But its wood had a second life, and maybe an even more important one: fence posts. Osage orange became famous for posts because of its extreme durability and natural resistance to decay. That kind of durability matters enormously on a farm. A fence post does not get applause. Nobody admires it. Nobody writes poems about it. But if it fails, the whole system fails with it. And for generations, Osage orange posts built a reputation for just not giving up. Not forever. Nothing is forever. But long enough that people remembered. Long enough that old farmers passed the story down. Long enough that even in the age of steel and chemicals, the name still carries a certain respect among woodworkers, bowyers, and rural landowners. If you enjoy stories about forgotten materials and overlooked history, subscribe. There is a lot more hiding in plain sight. Here is the part that usually gets left out. Osage orange was excellent, but it was not easy. Its trunks are often smaller, more crooked, and more irregular than the classic timber trees that dominate commercial lumber. That makes it less convenient for producing long, clean, standardized boards at scale. And then there is the hardness. Hardness sounds like a pure advantage, but in real woodworking, hardness can also mean labor. More effort to mill, more effort to shape, more resistance when an industry wants speed, standard sizes, and predictable supply. That is the hidden truth. The best material does not always win. The material that fits the system wins. And Osage orange fit one system very well. The older rural world of hedges, fence lines, bow staves, farm repairs, and local craft. But it fit the newer industrial system far less well. Then came the real turning point. Barbed wire. Once barbed wire spread across American agriculture, the need for living hedges as primary fencing dropped sharply. And this was not a small change. It was a total change in logic. A hedge takes time. A hedge needs planting, pruning, land, and patience. Wire can be shipped, wire can be stretched, wire can fence huge distances fast. That is hard to compete with, even if the older solution is elegant, durable, and in some ways superior. So Osage orange did not become obsolete because it stopped working. It became less important because newer systems rewarded speed, scale, and standardization more than permanence. That is a very different story, and it is one we see again and again. That is why the tree survives in such a strange way in modern life. Many people know it only as a messy tree with unusual fruit. But woodworkers know the color, bowyers know the reputation, rural landowners know the fence post stories, and specialty users still seek it out for durable, beautiful, high-performance work. It never became completely worthless. It became specialized, and that may be even more revealing, because specialization is what happens when a material remains excellent, but no longer matches the dominant economy around it. When people say, "We stopped using Osage orange," that is true, but only partly. We stopped using it the way an older America used it, as a hedge, as a fence line, as a default answer to rural durability, as a material chosen not because it was easy, but because it lasted. And that may be the real lesson here. We did not simply move on from a wood. We moved on from a set of priorities. A tree like this made sense in a world that valued local materials, long-term use, repair, patience, and practical endurance. In a faster world, those traits became less visible. Not less valuable, just less rewarded. That is why Osage orange feels forgotten. Not because it failed, but because it belonged to a different rhythm of life. And sometimes the most revealing materials are the ones history leaves standing quietly at the edge of a field. Still alive, still useful, still tougher than almost anyone remembers. So the next time you see one of those strange green fruits lying in the grass, remember, you are not looking at a useless tree. You are looking at a survivor from an older America. A tree that made bows, held farms together, outlasted weather, and earned a reputation most materials never get. It did not vanish because it was inferior. It faded because the world stopped asking for what it did best. And maybe that raises a bigger question. How many of our best materials, tools, and ideas have not actually become worse, only less convenient? If you want more documentaries about forgotten materials, lost techniques, and the hidden logic behind everyday history, subscribe and tell me in the comments, what other obsolete material still deserves respect?